The majority of interviews in sports are white noise. We all walk on after a brief coach speech and a few courteous sound bites. However, the entire fan community occasionally erupts when someone says something that gets to them. That's just what the Indiana Fever recently experienced. The Fever supporters lost it after the team president said one sentence. It was a tale that went global. The comment sections went crazy. The president of the Fever removed her former account due to the intense backlash. This is the part, though, that nobody anticipated. The most significant thing she stated was not even included in the video that began it all. The true narrative that was concealed in the press conference is far worse if you're a Fever supporter. The excitement around 2025 was incredible for Fever supporters. New coach, new leadership, and what many referred to as the greatest free agency haul in years. The Now You Know initiative, it wasn't nuanced. The WNBA as a whole was informed. This is our league now. Yes, indeed. They also have the most talked about athlete in women's sports, Caitlin Clark, rested, rejuvenated, and seemed prepared to assume control. Anticipations from the roof. It was more than just a rebuild. It was championship or bust win now. And they got off to a spectacular start, tearing up the home court sky. It appeared as though everything was coming together. Then reality set in due to injuries. Caitlin Clark has missed almost half of the season. The veteran brought in to examine the locker room was Dana Bonner. After just 9 games, she left. It's frustrating that the product on the court doesn't even come close to addressing it. On certain nights, they appear to be unstoppable, defeating competitors such as the Aces, Dream, Lynx, and Liberty. They lost twice to the Sparks on other nights. Additionally, the plan has been obvious while Caitlin is on the floor. Play her off the ball, which is incidentally the exact opposite of her preferred environment. She repeated something to herself several times. Let's review. A championship run is what you promised. You brought in the veterinarians. You brought on a new coach. And you're taking the ball away from your stars while hardly playing 500 basketballs halfway through the season. Fans are furious, yes. Furthermore, the coach isn't the only one they blame. They are observing the GM, the front office, and Kelly Krasko, the president of the Fever, who is the mastermind behind it all. There was a lot of hope when Kelly, who had served as assistant general manager for the Pacers for 6 years, was appointed president of the Fever in 2024. Fans had been clamoring for this seasoned leader, someone who could truly get it right. While building around Caitlin Clark, now however, that optimism has vanished midway through a rocky season. Then this footage appeared, and things blew up.
Yes, we have a foundational player in Caitlin Clark and Leah Boston, and we're going to continue to add to that. But I want this team to be the leader in the country, and a brand, an enduring brand, like Apple or something.
The outcry was instantaneous and focused on a single issue. Caitlin Clark is the Indiana Fever, not simply one of their members. To be honest, fans weren't mistaken. The franchise value of the Fever has skyrocketed, up 273% since Caitlin joined the league. They are now the third most valued club in the WNBA, with a $335 million valuation. Indiana had little more than 4,000 spectators per home game on average in 2023. That number increased by 318% to over 17,000 over the previous season. Furthermore, it doesn't end there. ESPN's viewership increased by 170% over the previous season. However, Caitlin's games carried it rather than merely contributing. 45% of the league's total broadcast value consisted of her matches. Only when Caitlin was visiting the city did teams shift their games to NBA arenas. Ticket prices surged, merchandise exploded, and the value of every franchise in the league doubled or increased. The WNBA is currently valued at $3.5 billion. Fans are not exaggerating when they claim that Caitlin Clark is the brand. She is the driving force for the whole league, not simply the focal point of the Fever. Therefore, if Kelly Krasko claims to be creating the WNBA's equivalent of Apple, then Caitlin Clark is more than just the iPad. She is also the iPhone, MacBook Pro, and AirPods. The whole product line is her. You don't keep that product hidden in the break room if you want it to succeed. You give her the reins and let her create, which is her strongest suit. However, that hasn't been the case this season. Despite Caitlin's repeated statements that she performs best while planning the offense, head coach Stephanie White has designed a motion-heavy scheme that keeps her off the ball. There is more to the mismatch than just strategy. It has been frustrating for spectators because in addition to abusing the generational playmaker, you are also diluting the product when you ask her to wait for non-generational players to perform the hard work. The Fever looks like a team that doesn't know what they have. The offense stagnates, and the games are dull. Kelly's remarks may have been the end of this matter if Caitlin had been given the opportunity to flourish. However, Kelly's remarks came as a crushing blow to the squad, which was failing to find its identity, lingering around 500 and clearly restricting its brightest star. Since the media, rival players, and even some league officials have been questioning Caitlin's celebrity for more than a year, saying that she is overhyped, that she hasn't earned it, and that the league's success isn't due to her. Therefore, it felt like just another leader trying to minimize Caitlin Clark's importance when the Fever president suggested that the team is larger than her. And there was an immediate pushback. It was picked up by Fox News, Yahoo, the Daily Mail, and the New York Post. The most bizarre aspect, however, is the one that nobody seemed to notice. This press conference wasn't recently held. This was from a previous week. Even this season it wasn't. The fact that it was from 2024 somehow exacerbates the situation. I thus watched the entire press conference. You're welcome. And to be honest, Kelly said a lot of things that sounded really fantastic considering the period and the momentum the franchise was in at the time. Supporters had optimism. It had a powerful vibe. Additionally, the Fever received a resoundingly good response on their own YouTube page. In more than 950 comments, individuals praised her as being knowledgeable, professional, and bright, and many believed she was the ideal team leader. Nobody objected to what she said at the time. However, after witnessing the real events, that same news conference has a very different impact, because there was one statement that is far more illuminating than the Apple analogy hidden in the midst of all the corporate optimism. In all honesty, it should leave every Fever supporter perplexed.
So many similarities in Caitlin and Tyrese, primarily because they control the tempo of the game. And we want to play almost identical to the way the Pacers are playing, or maybe they want to play like we're playing. But either way, it's, finding those right fits around a point guard like her is going to make us awfully dangerous.
What Kelly described there is exactly what fans wanted to hear. A fast-paced offense with the ball in Caitlin Clark's hands, creating for others, setting the tone. That's Caitlin Clark basketball. And just to make sure there was no confusion, she doubled down by saying how attractive Caitlin's style of play is to free agents.
I would think that if you are a smart basketball player and you watch the way she plays, you would want to play with her. She, much like Tyrese Halliburton, she gets you the ball in places that you didn't even know you were open.
So all of this begs the obvious question, what happened? Because what fans were sold, a fast, free-flowing offense built around Caitlin Clark, isn't it what we've been watching? Not even close. It's driven fans and analysts insane.
How much grace are we going to give to a coach because the coach says we're working things out for the rest of the season, we're trying to figure out our identity? Do you want to know what your identity is? You shouldn't need to figure out your identity. You have Caitlin effing Clark on your team.
And it's not just the play style, it's the personnel. Because remember, Hilly didn't just promise a system that showcased Caitlin. She said players would want to come play with her, that they'd attract the right pieces to build around her skill set. But let's look at who they actually brought in. Dana Bonner, the seasoned vet expected to bring stability, was gone after 9 games, reportedly because of fit issues. Natasha Howard hasn't been horrible, but she seems to have trouble adjusting to Caitlin's playstyle. And what is she doing, looking at Caitlin off and carrying the ball up the floor? She said she wanted to be MVP, and now rewatching this clip, you have to wonder what kind of role she was promised.
Today, the way Indiana came at me with everything they promised me and they keeping their promise, they so.
And this is where things start to get confusing, with the entire league watching, with free agents reportedly interested with all the leverage in the world. The president and the GM, Amber Cox, brought in players that either don't match the system or don't match Caitlin. So what was the actual plan here? What was the pitch? What kind of basketball were they selling to the players? Why aren't we getting Caitlin Clark basketball? That question leads to what many Fever fans see as the most concerning part of the whole equation: the coach, Stephanie White. Because if the president says you're building around Caitlin, you'd think the coach you hire would reflect that vision, right? Someone who'd unleash their full skill set. Someone who'd build a system that fits her like a glove. So I went back and watched Stephanie White's introductory press conference. And yeah, Fever fans are going to feel like they've been lied to again.
Anything, we want to continue to be exactly what they are: a fun, fast-paced, up-tempo style of play.
So let me get this straight. Kelly says she wants to play like the Pacers, fast, modern, and built around Caitlin. Stephanie says they want to play just like they did in 2024. No wonder people were excited. It all sounded great. Everyone was saying the right things. They sold fans on Caitlin Clark basketball on a system tailor-made for her generational game. And honestly, even Caitlin bought in. She was super supportive of her new coach and teammates, but now even she seems frustrated.
Steph has talked about kind of taking some pressure off you with Harry kind of running point in some actions and you playing off the ball. Just how do you think that will help when you reintegrate on too?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be nice probably not to have to bring the ball up against pressure 94 feet, but like I said, that's what I'm best at, so we're still gonna do it.
Now this is what disagreeing with your coach sounds like in the media. I understand where you're coming from, but I need the ball. And it's not just fans who are picking up on it. There's real concern that Stephanie White either doesn't trust Caitlin enough to hand her the keys to the offense, or just doesn't want to play that style at all. And when you listen to how Stephanie White talked about Luka Doncic while doing commentary for a Mavericks game, that worry starts to make a whole lot more sense.
When you see the Mavs just play differently without Luka on the floor, he's a guy who's high usage rate, the ball's in his hands. When he's not on the floor, that ball is moving, it's popping, multiple players getting involved in action, and everyone's stepping up.
You can hear it in her voice. She doesn't love offenses that revolve around a single player, even one as gifted as Luka. So if she didn't love it for Luka, why would she embrace it for Caitlin? Because that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing a system that keeps the ball moving, just not starting with Caitlin. A system that values structure over improvisation. And that brings us right back to the clip that set the whole thing off. Let's be clear. Yes, the press conference is 9 months old, and yes, fans were optimistic when they first heard it. But that's what makes it worse. Because now that the clip has resurfaced, we have an opportunity to revisit everything that's been promised. And now that we've seen the product, now that we've seen the system, the coaching, the decisions, that clip doesn't feel like an out-of-context soundbite. It feels like a broken promise. Fever leadership told the world they were building around Caitlin Clark. They said it would be a fast-paced pacer, style offense built to run through her. They said they'd attract players who wanted to play her style. They said the coach would bring pace and tempo. And now we get to hold them to that, because unless they were lying through their teeth, and I don't think they were, this is a case of them bringing in players and a coach they were familiar with, but not ones who necessarily fit what made Caitlin. and the Fever successful? And that raises a much bigger question. If they can't match the vision they sold, can they really build around the most important player in women's basketball? Kelly Kraskoff can talk about building the next Apple all she wants, but Fever fans know the truth. They're not just Fever fans. They're Caitlin Clark fans first. If leadership strategy doesn't work and Caitlin leaves the Fever down the road, the Fever go back to the dark ages with half-empty arenas. Caitlin's fans will follow her wherever she goes. The Apple dream is over. That press conference may be old, but it just opened a brand new door. And Fever fans still have every right to walk through it and question everything.